Hello, friends and fans of the podcast. Yeah, this is your host, Artie Astor, on an impromptu, last-minute, what the heck, why not do it episode of B Sharp and C. Today, I want to focus on a band, and I posted something on Facebook just recently, and, I'm going to try to just cover this information and to be nice but understanding at the same time, okay? This is not 1965. It's not 1969. It's not even the mid-'80s when Slash can go into a Chinese restaurant and it's filmed for Behind the Music on VH1 or MTV. Check out the Behind the Music scenes with Slash and Axl Rose. And they go into a Chinese restaurant and the owner comes out and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, this, that, and the other thing. We'll try to accommodate." And then Slash is actually yelling out racial slurs at the man while there's a cameraman following him. And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And Slash he's just being a racist jerk, to be honest with you. This is not that, okay? We're not in the 60s. It's actually not cool to just be all hopped up on drugs. It's not. It's not cool to be interviewed and to be sitting there in the chair on Quaaludes and heroin, unable to finish a sentence while you're being interviewed by someone, and you're like, "Oh, no way, man. No, I play the guitar because the birds have colors. The birds have colors. Do you see it? Hold on a second. I can see the music. I can see the music." This is not that, okay? This is 2021. If you say anything incorrectly, the PC police come out and they cancel you, okay? You look at someone too long, you make eye contact with the wrong person for too long, you're canceled. I mean, that's just how it is. That's the world we live in, okay? But yet, baby boomers are out there saying, "I want rock and roll back. I want rock and roll back." But, this is what I don't get. Baby boomer will look at Amy Winehouse and say, "Oh, what a tragic life. Tragic life. Horrible. Horrible. She wasted her life with drugs. She just needed to open her eyes and see what she had to do. Lay off the booze, lay off the drugs. What a waste of a talent." That's what a baby boomer will say about Amy Winehouse. Baby boomers talking about other artists from the 70s. "Oh, yeah, no, the Rolling Stones. They were on heroin every day, but they were just so good. And Aerosmith, oh, man, that was rock and roll. Yeah, they could barely pronounce their own name because of all the Quaaludes and everything else they were doing, but that was rock. Led Zeppelin, oh, you can't touch it. You can't touch it with a 10-foot pole." There's almost a double standard. And I don't want to push one generation into the corner because every generation, mine included, has its weird idiosyncrasies that are sometimes inexplicable. But all that being said, a lot of people, and I'm talking, so my generation, so I'm from the 80s and 90s, and we still appreciated regular, a classic rock, I guess you could say. We liked, Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and The Doors, and we embraced bands like Metallica and Guns N' Roses, and I even took to Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains and a lot of that alternative rock that came out, right? I took to all of that. I really, truly did. And I am one of the people saying, let's get a good rock band together. Let's get behind a rock band. Where the heck is just 4 or 5 guys on a stage with strings, right? And I'm not talking cellos and violins, strings and drums. And where is that? And a singer who just knows what he's doing, right? And then comes the band Greta Van Fleet, and it's like they're tickling the gag reflex of people that were raised in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. This band, they sound too much like Zeppelin. What are they trying to do? And then when the band gets interviewed, look at them. They don't even act like rock and rollers. What? High? They're not on heroin while they're being interviewed. They're not hallucinating and seeing purple elephants floating across the wall while they're talking. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And I'm not going to get technical. I've received feedback from the viewers. People do not like it when I get technical about music. I actually lose them. So I'm trying to employ some non-technical, dialogue. Well, I guess this would be like monologue because it's only me talking. I'm alone. But yeah, I'm trying to employ different tactics here and not get technical. But let me just say this on a non-technical scale. They sound more like Rush to me than they sound like Led Zeppelin. So this whole thing, because they have like one song that like, wow, really sounds like Led Zeppelin, and that's good. Good for them. The rest of their stuff, it sounds like Greta Van Fleet, actually, but it smacks more of Rush than it does of Led Zeppelin. And, it's interesting because when the band gets questioned about, like, you sound like Van Halen, I mean, not Van Halen, I'm sorry, you sound like Led Zeppelin, you get a lot of answers. And Josh Kiska, the lead singer, he's kind of funny, actually. This dude, I mean, if you've ever seen, what's that band? Jethro Tull. If you've ever seen Jethro Tull live, Ian Anderson, the lead singer and flautist for the band Jethro Tull, is a weird human being. Like on stage live, being interviewed, the dude's normal. On stage live, what he does, how he dresses, how he acts, it's like theater. And I really believe Josh Kiska tries to do that because he gets interviewed and he's the only one in his family that speaks with a semi-British accent. I'm still trying to figure that out. He was getting interviewed and he was like, well, and I'm like, what the poop? No one else, and his brothers, his twin brother is right there and he speaks like a gringo. So I don't know. Well, I guess a person from Britain would be a gringo too. He speaks with an American accent. Josh kind of has like this mixed accent. His presence is odd, but you see that, but that's, and I hate to say it, he's like 5'3", okay? 5'3". He's got like this, I don't want to say he's got a baby face, but he's got a very youthful look to his face. But when he speaks, you can tell that he's just like a sponge. Like he absorbs everything around him and he tries to learn from absolutely everything that's happening around him. You can tell he's very observant, very intelligent, and he actually approaches music like in this way of like, okay, I'm going to approach it music first, essentially, even though they're like constantly fighting against criticism. To me, I think I would have already been in jail if I became famous and like every single interview, people were like, well, Artie, everyone thinks you sound like Jimmy Page and you play the guitar. And like, I didn't even have my own identity, but I was always compared to someone else. I probably would have hit someone in the face with my guitar. It gets irritating just constantly facing criticism. But they do a good job with it. Josh actually says he does not even, like, Led Zeppelin, or help me out here, the lead singer, Robert Plant. He said Robert Plant wasn't even that big of an influence to him growing up. In fact, he didn't even get into Led Zeppelin until he was, in like late in high school. And he's a young guy, so that's not too long ago, actually. But no, he'll come right out and say, I don't sit there and listen to like Led Zeppelin albums and say, how can I sound like Robert Plant? There's a lady who's sure. Oh, nope, I didn't get it right. Let me try again. There's a lady. Nope, a little too rough. Let me try. No, he didn't sit there and try to copy Robert Plant. Now, that is different from his brother, Jake. Jake is the guitar player, the only guitar player. And I love how it's like bass guitar, singer, drummer. I love that. And everyone is forced to kind of step it up, even if you don't have the skills. And I see that with Jake. And Jake, if you're listening, don't be offended. I believe that when you get out there and what you're doing is you're just exposing everything about Jake Kiska. You're getting out there and you're exposing everything you have as a person, as a musician, as an entertainer. You're just getting out there and you're holding one instrument in your hand, and it's the only thing that you have to express yourself with. And, Jimmy Page did that a lot. And I can see where Jimmy Page, I can see the influence because he comes out and admits that he studied Jimmy Page. He studied everything about him for a while. He even does that style where he kind of like leans back a little bit like Jimmy Page, and he strums chords a little violently like Jimmy Page did, and he takes that aggressive approach to playing the guitar. But it's because he really does on many times a night, many times during a concert. It is the Jake Kiska show. He has to, once Josh stops singing and, Jake comes in and does what he has to do on the guitar, and he knows it. So you compensate for it by stage presence. And he's good. Don't get me wrong. He's a good guitar player. He's perfect for the role that he plays in the band. And I don't hear any amazing solos. He's not like Eric Clapton or David Gilmour or Mark Knopfler. He's not going to take you away with just long melodic interludes. That's really not his style. But then again, he's young. This whole entire band is young. Sam, the bass player, also does keyboards, does a great job. I love Danny Wagner on the drums. I actually think he's underrated, and they'll do drum solos and stuff in their shows. I mean, this is 4 dudes who have talent, and they're out there doing what they can. Josh's voice is just really good. But the reason why I'm coming out and I'm doing this impromptu last-minute episode about Greta Van Fleet is because everyone was like, we need rock and roll. We need rock and roll. This band comes out, and because they have a song that sounds like Led Zeppelin, and maybe other people actually think they sound a little bit too much like Rush, whatever the case is, they've gotten some harsh criticism. So it's almost like there are generations out there saying, bring us rock and roll, bring us rock and roll. And then Greta Van Fleet comes out and says, here we are. And then the world is like, no, not that kind of rock and roll. But what I actually do like the fact that they are being embraced by a lot of people. I mean, their views on YouTube, tens of millions of views. And I like to see that. I like to see, especially a lot of younger generation. I've had a lot of people, and I want to thank everyone who has actually contacted me directly. Friend of the podcast, Fabio, has contacted me. Friend of the podcast, John, I believe, contacted me. Who else contacted me? I think Daniel. I don't remember. There were a few people who contacted me, and they're like, what do you think of Greta Van Fleet? Oh yeah, Sammy, friend of the podcast, Sammy. He was once actually interviewed on the episode about vinyl records. He contacted me. What do you think about Greta Van Fleet? A lot of younger people are taking to Greta Van Fleet, and it's like good because it's just people with instruments expressing themselves with music, and it's not perfect, and that's why it's perfect. All right? And I don't even think I need to repeat that. I think the meaning behind what I just said is very obvious. Now, I didn't see Robert Plant make these comments. I just read Robert Plant's comments. Hold on, let me find it. He said, Robert Plant came out and said, yeah, that sounds like a good Led Zeppelin 1. So he's saying that, in an interview, this was in 2018, Robert Plant said that Greta Van Fleet sounds like Led Zeppelin 1 and described Josh as a beautiful little singer. Now, is it passive aggression? I mean, he could have said it laughing and then right after it said, he's the best singer I ever heard in my life. I'm wicked jealous. I have no idea. All I know is that this could be easily taken out of context. I read these comments by Robert Plant, and I think he's like taking like an underhanded jab at them. It doesn't really seem all that positive. But whatever the case is, it's a band of 4 people from Michigan. And if I may just add, Michigan is no joke. Michigan is no joke. Most of my listeners from this podcast are in the American Midwest. Many are from Michigan, Illinois, but many are from Michigan. And why? Well, it's the same reason why Aerosmith had to leave Boston. Me being a Bostonian, I would love to say, oh yeah, no, we Boston bands, we know what we're doing. Okay, the band formed Aerosmith formed in Boston. You know what they had to do? They had to leave Boston and go to Michigan, places like Flint and Detroit, right? They had to go to Michigan, and they were so well received in Michigan that some people actually thought Aerosmith was a band from Michigan. Because let's just face it, they got so much popularity there, they liked playing there. So they booked more venues. Why not? If that's who's listening to your music, right? Michigan has got some really great rockers. Bob Seger, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is from Michigan. But not only, do some good musicians come out of Michigan, just the fans of music in Michigan, I tip my hat to them. I think they're the best rock fans in the country. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying they're the best music fans in the country, but they certainly know how to embrace rock and roll. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So anyways, this band is from Michigan. Greta Van Fleet. Listen to them yourself. Listen to them. Listen to a bunch of songs and then tell me what you think the band sounds like. Maybe I'll do a question on my Instagram page. What rock band does Greta Van Fleet remind you of? Although I don't want to raise that idea of thinking. I don't want to make people think that Greta Van Fleet has to be compared to somebody. I really don't, because if you listen to Josh sing and you listen to the band and the way they I don't want to say produce their music, because I don't even know if they're producers of their own music. I should say this. If you listen to the band and you listen to the way they just play their music, the drums, the bass, the guitar, and you hear Josh singing, you don't get, oh, this is one band. You don't get it. I mean, the guitar player, Jake, he actually doesn't sound like Jimmy Page. He might look like him when he's on the stage playing, the way he plays, the style of play, but he doesn't really sound like Jimmy Page. He sounds like Jake Kiska, for crying out loud. He doesn't, I believe he has his own identity. And if I could say one thing about Jake, and, if he's listening, this might be something that actually he might take some encouragement from. David Gilmour, who a lot of people think is like just one of the best guitarists ever, was in the band Pink Floyd for years before he actually created that identity of, wow, this is a great guitar player. The singer Josh, if anything, if he's going to remind me of someone, I wouldn't even choose Robert Plant. I would choose Geddy Lee. So I don't know if I'm even the right person to talk to, but all I have to say is it's a good rock band, and I'm happy to see the younger people taking to it. And if anything, that proves, and I have to do another episode about the organic nature of music, but it's the younger ones who are listening to vinyl right now. It's the younger ones, the younger generation, 20s and 30s, who not only are they now getting back into vinyl, but they're looking at TV shows that have dialogue and good scripts and not necessarily explosions. And I think the younger generation is not wowed by technology, which is funny because they were basically raised in technology. They're like living in the Matrix, for crying out loud. But they're not sitting there saying everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be this. Everything has to be that. Everything. I love how there's more attention going to the organic side of music, which is how it began in the first place. So please, listen to Greta Van Fleet. Tell me what you think about this band. I am dying to hear your opinion. This is your host, Ari Aster of B Sharp and C, saying until next time, keep it groovy, baby.
20 years. It's been 20 years since I opened the door to get in. I don't know how, I don't know how I feel a breeze from that door open now. Oh, I've been excited since I don't know when to see a world where our dreams come reaping through the seas of the day, of the day, of the day. There's a reason, there's a reason that this room exists alone. It's in the eastern, it's in the eastern leaves of the fall. Oh, I've been excited since I don't know when to see a world where our dreams come reaping through the seams of the day, of the day, of the day. Oh, I've been excited since I don't know when to see a world